What was the incident at your school? In middle school, some kids put laxative chocolates in donuts and handed them out. The school went on lockdown. The police came. Kids were crying. Kids were pooping. Kids were looking for some donuts to get out of class. It was an interesting day. You figure the sight of kids having sonic diarrhea would tell them, skipping class is not worth it. This one kid was constantly bullied by a group of rednecks. One day when he was at McDonald's, they showed up and started taunting him and berating him, and so he left and went to the tractor supply store next door. So he's walking around and they followed him and started taunting him again and just being dicks. Next thing you know, the bullied kid picks up an axe from the aisle and hits the leader of the bullies in the face. Everyone called it the axe silent. Edit, posted article. Then removed it because bad idea. I went to Catholic school, and so we had a school chaplain who was essentially some sort of friend to the kids. It sounds really creepy when you say it like that, but the dude was fucking amazing. He talked multiple students out of suicide, helped tons of kids come to terms with and overcome bullying, harassment, and sexual domestic abuse, as well as encouraging every single student to reach for their dreams. Anyway, he once went the extra mile for a very troubled family at my school. The two kids in question were adopted brothers and both incredibly unstable. The brothers would be your best friend 1 second, and they suddenly fly off the handle the next, making you literally fear for your life. Anyway, knowing their family problems, the school chaplain volunteered to become the two boys' godfather in order to legally be able to help them and their family out financially. About a year after I finished school, the school chaplain appeared in the local newspapers. He had been arrested and imprisoned for raping the older of the two lads. For most people, that was enough to condemn him. But most of the people I went to school with found the whole thing to be somewhat suspicious. Whenever someone encountered one of the two boys, they would instantly launch into a step-by-step recount of what exactly happened, as if desperate to convince everyone they knew that they were telling the truth. The only thing wrong was that these step-by-step recounts were usually vast, different each time they were told, as if poorly thought out. Regardless, the chaplain imprisoned and eventually died of cancer while still inside. It was only after his death that it finally came out that the rape never happened. The chaplain had run into financial trouble himself and so was unable to keep giving the boy's family money. As punishment, the whole family, yes, the parents were the ones to came up with the idea, invented the rape story to teach him a lesson. The guy was a fucking hero. He even helped my girlfriend at the time get through her parents' divorce in one piece. And yet, his lot in life wound up with him sad, forgotten, and alone. Edit, chaplain, not chaplain XD. Holy fuck. This is one of the saddest things I've ever read. Awesome sounding guy. In elementary, we had 3 students that had to go out and empty the compost in the afternoon. One day, my 2 friends and I were disposing of the compost outside, and we seen a guy carrying a shotgun which happened to be loaded. We didn't know. Literally down the road beside the school. My friends and I thought he was probably just going duck hunting, so we went over and talked to him. He was a pretty chill guy. When we went inside the school, everybody was hiding underneath the desks and the school was in lockdown due to an armed man walking around the school with intent to kill. I was scared shitless at the thought of such a man, not realizing I had just had a 5-minute convo with him about hunting. The next day, we all found out that the armed man broke into a house down the road and shot somebody. TLD, our school went into lockdown and my friends and I were hanging out with the gunman. Former South African SAS, now high school tech teacher, ripped his shirt off and confronted a gang member that had come onto school grounds with a knife to take out a student with connections to a rival gang. Tech teacher wraps his torn shirt around his hand and grabs the knife while punching the gang member in the head with the other hand, knocking him out cold. All at lunchtime with half the school watching. The high school cop was fired for molesting a 10-year-old girl. He then murdered his wife and fled. He's on America's top 10 Marshall's top 15 most wanted list now. His mum thinks he's dead. His name was Dan Hires. Seniors at our high school had a lounge, real nice place. It was at a back area near the auditorium. They found a couple having sex there, and so they did the reasonable thing to do and moved the lounge's location to right next to the front office. Then they found people smoking weed in there, so they removed the walls to the lounge and added glass walls instead. Fucking balls. Smoking right next to the office. Edit, apparently I should have said lamp fuel because it isn't oil at all. It's either kerosene or ethanol. At a private Christian school, a girl in 12th grade got pregnant. According to the official rules, she was supposed to be expelled to protect the school's image. Instead, all the teachers and principals got together and decided that that's not what Jesus would do, and that the rule was idiotic. They didn't expel her and gave her all the support she needed during the pregnancy and after. My freshman year of HS, a senior oiled himself down with grapeseed oil and party-boyed through the fully packed lunchroom. He went up to a table maybe 20 feet from me and put his dong on a girl's back before making his way to the other side of the cafeteria to be tasered in front of 400 people. When I was in high school, we had an outdoor discovery class that was basically just a giant ropes course. The teacher for that class was a nice middle-aged man. One day he decided to take a shower in the locker room between periods and had a stroke. Now, I don't know what about this stroke was different, but it made him decide he needed to go for a jog around the high school and middle school, naked as the day he was born. So he's but naked, sprinting past classroom windows in just his socks and sneakers, which he somehow thought to put on when a sub goes outside to see what's going on when the outdoor teacher runs over and basically starts playing a game of catch me if you can until the ambulance arrives. It was a very odd day, but he was back to work a couple weeks later, making kids swing from ropes and climb over logs like normal. Edit, just saw I got a bunch of replies. To clarify, no, he was not a druggie and didn't go on a bender. He was an older man outdoorsman, healthy and didn't give off any kind of drug vibe. It is possible, as some have pointed out, that he had an underlying condition that somehow got triggered and led to this. He was a nice guy even after this happened, probably a little embarrassed about everyone seeing his birthday suit. But he carried on. Jeremy Dell shot himself in class and Pearl Jam wrote a song about it. I was in the counselor's office in the hall beneath where it happened. The gunshot sounded like someone dropped a stack of books. It wasn't until a girl ran screaming down the hall that people realized something horrible had happened. A kid took a picture Polaroid of his junk and put it in the men's room God knows why in 6th grade. Anyway, they somehow figured out it was him and this followed him all the way through high school. One time someone wrote in a bathroom stall, "Fuck this school, bomb on Monday." The next Monday, they set up a metal detector and checked people's bags. About half the kids stayed home. Nothing happened, obviously. About a week later, someone wrote in the same stall where the other message had been painted over. "Fuck mudbloods, basilisk on Wednesday." I'd never felt more school spirit. My freshman year of college, our dean of admissions was arrested for forcing Chinese foreign students to do manual labor at her house under threat of revoking their student status. While awaiting trial for slavery, she tried to burn her house down for the insurance money. When that didn't work, she killed herself. Just a little funny thing. In high school, we moved into a brand new building right during Christmas break. All the doors were the safety ones that had self-closers on them, so every door had one of those triangle wood blocks you could use to keep the door open. A couple friends and maybe myself started collecting them and putting them in an unused locker. It started slow at first, but in a couple weeks we had people we didn't even know giving them to us. After another week or so of this, and we have the locker almost full, we assumed the wood shop was knocking out more of them as they were being lifted, and that's why we had so many. The principal finally did an announcement about it, and since the locker was full, we decided to drop an anonymous note that essentially took the staff on a hunt with riddles taking them to different locations with the final "stop the locker with our bounty" in it. We assumed they tracked them down because the next time we checked the locker, it was empty. We guessed they had a shelf in a storage room somewhere with a bunch of these doorstops sitting on them since they had made so many more. There was also the time where a kid died in the courtyard after practicing wrestling moves, falling and hitting his head on the bench. As someone who saw him fall, be resuscitated by a teacher, and then die, it was pretty traumatic. That was probably the main incident until a couple of years later when another kid died after getting hit by a car after school. We sadly had a kid who climbed up the closed bleachers ones that could pull away from the wall and dove into a soccer netting of some type headfirst as a prank. We think he did not survive. Edit, and a girl I rode the bus with went missing and was found dead under a pile of smoldering tires. She was still alive when they set the tires on fire. And two girls a few years younger than me got in a car with an older guy they knew who took them out in the woods and beat them both with a baseball bat, one to death and the other survived by crawling to a road. Damn, it sounds like I grew up in a rough area but not really. Second edit, so apparently some of you are saying none of this is true. It indeed is, but I'm not going to provide the name of the area since I'd like to keep my specific location private. Also, I'm old, so this was a long time ago. Like PRE internet. So if you're trying to search any of it, you won't find it. Last year I did try to look up info on the baseball bat case because I was curious what sentence the guy got and if he was still locked up. After a ton of digging, I only found one legal paper about an appeal he tried. Final edit, I was looking up the wrong name. The guy is in prison for life. First-degree murder and rape. And he didn't actually know the girls. The other girl recovered and testified. Jesus Christ. Those are all fucking awful. Kind of calls into question your username. A girl tried selling weed to the school cop. She's the type of person who would smoke hand soap because it had the word hemp in it. Someone stole a urinal from one of the boys' bathrooms in high school. Oh yeah, the principal went on about how if we knew anything we should come forward because we must stop the bathroom bandits. Of course, no one came forward because once the bathroom bandits had a name they became legend. I never did find out who they were. But someone found the urinal 3 years later, hidden under some stairs behind the auditorium, a good distance from the bathroom it was taken from. One day in gym class, all the males left gym and went to see this massive shit someone left in the men's room. It was so huge it clogged the toilet itself without the use of any paper. One of the guys tried to flush it and it seemed to just make a huge suction until thump. It all went down in one go. Everyone laughed and returned to gym. Then it happened again, basically the same thing. Administrator of our school had an assembly saying that all the boys needed to flush the toilets and that the hallway smelled like shit. One of the male teachers standing behind me at the assembly said, "You couldn't flush it. It was as big as your arm." Edit, thanks for the gold. This happened in Pennsylvania. The teacher that made the arm comment was a Swedish guy in charge of our ID program at the school. I imagine that teacher saying it like he'd just seen a ghost. You weren't there. You didn't seen what I saw. 2 kids got in a fight in 9th grade and one of the kids got punched in the stomach so hard he pooped himself. It landed on the floor. I mean, did the punch knock his underpants off? Fell through the bottom of his shorts. He must have been wearing boxers as well for this to happen. Never questioned this until now. Though, in year 7, we had a storm and the winds were so strong they blew the roof off. We were all evacuated and sent home and then had 2 or 3 weeks off school after that, and the top floor of the school was blocked off for months. Edit 1, this happened in Blackpool, England. Edit 2, year 7 is the first year in high school, which you start when you're 11. Was your school a shack by any chance? Kid managed to put a pencil through his foot in the middle of lunchtime. I was still in line and saw the entire cafeteria stand up and go running towards the windows. He'd apparently been trying to break the pencil by stepping on it, but instead managed to put it through his foot to the point where it came out the top. There was so much screaming. At one of our grad parties, a grade 11 kid locked himself in the bathroom. After some time passed and the line grew, the party host knocked on the door and said he's going to unlock the door with a nail in 30 seconds by sticking the nail in that hole in the center of the knob. The door opened and the kid was naked and flogging his dolphin. His sister, who was also at the party, was so embarrassed she dragged him out and started to rough up and berate her naked younger brother. Through his tears and his sister's yelling, he said that he'd never even been kissed before. He turned out all right though. I don't get how people get so horny they jerk off in public. Someone set off a pepper spray bomb in the hallway after lunch. We were evacuated to the building next door and only directly related family members were allowed to pick us up. My neighbor drove my sister and I to school, so we were stuck there for like 3 hours. Also, that was on my birthday. One Friday afternoon, some kids played football in the schoolyard. Schoolyards are generally the only places here where you can play football here. Some older kids came, threatened the younger kids who played, and the younger ones ran away. Then the younger kids returned, backed with some older kids, baseball bats and brass knuckles. It was one of the most violent scenes in the city in years. This caused the city council to lock all schools and other public places that have football basketball fields the entire weekend. Every weekend. Ex-gon give it to YA. Fuck what you heard. This was an ongoing thing, I guess you could call a series of incidents. But shit hit the fan the year after I graduated. One of the teachers, Teacher 1, was found to have been having an ongoing relationship with an 18-year-old student. Not really that crazy, I mean it is. But you hear about stuff like that all the time. The crazy part is what they uncovered while investigating Teacher 1. Another teacher, Teacher 2, was found to also have been having sex with students. Multiple students, 16 of them to be exact, spanning over the course of his entire career somewhere between 15 to 20 years. Apparently, he would pick a new girl every year or so, groom her, and have a relationship with her until she graduated and he moved on to someone else. He had one of them voluntarily, as in she was not technically kidnapped but went there on her own accord, living in his basement, and they would go on vacations together. Once the news about him came out, everyone went wild. They also found a third teacher, Teacher 3, while investigating too. Teacher 3 was a substitute that would buy underage girls alcohol in exchange for oral sex. All three were subsequently arrested and serving sentences in jail. A grand jury investigation found that the school board members, including the superintendent and the principal at the high school, all knew about Teacher 2's ongoing behavior, as there was numerous reports about it through the years. But there was a culture of we got to protect each other and the school's reputation, and nothing was done about it. The superintendent of the school board resigned, but now for some reason has been put back onto the school board, and the cycle will continue. TLDR, teachers banging students for like 20 years at my school, and the school covered it up. In college, we had the poop bandit. Less one incident and more a string of them. Some of his exploits. Shit in the washers in the men's freshman dorm. They were all top loaders and not many checked them. He'd shit in a random one every couple of weeks. Left pizza boxes in the co-ed dorm common areas with shit in them. Set it up so that it looked like, hey, free pizza. Forced the elevator door open in the co-ed dorm floor above the elevator and shit on top. It took a week for anyone to figure out why the elevator stank. He was so preoccupied with whether or not he could. He didn't stop to think if he should. I went to a private Christian school in middle school, and one day 2 of the high school students got caught fucking in the chapel's baptism tank. It was drained at the time. I still remember the screams from the teacher that caught them. Never saw either of them again. In middle school, we weren't allowed to turn the lights off because some girl got caught giving a hand job in class. She didn't get caught in the act, but she rubbed some of the dick milk on this other girl's arm, and the girl had an allergic reaction. Wait, you can be allergic to semen. Must have been a nut allergy. There was a stabbing at my middle school in 2005. Some chick took a butcher knife and stabbed her friend in the back. He was in a coma for a while but survived. And she turned herself in. Edit, the knife blade was 4-5 inches and the year I originally posted was wrong. In elementary school, all the boys got sent outside the last hour of class and lined up because someone had smeared their shit all over in the men's bathroom. I know now that they were looking at our fingernails because most kids aren't smart enough to clean under them. They told us to all hold out our hands and would send us back to class one by one after looking at them. But did they catch the scrack bandit? Yes, I'll never forget it. Was this kid named Jonathan. He got sent to in-school suspension, and like that scene in Shawshank Redemption, he turned on the radio and put it next to the palm microphone. He was a bad kid. We had a kid do this in high school. He wrote "Phantom Shitter" on the mirror. I believe he did it a few times and was eventually caught and sent for psychiatric monitoring. The chamber of feces has been opened. Enemies of the chair beware. You may have blinded the basilisk, but I can still smell you. A literal bomb was dropped in my school playground. We lived in Umaraside, the Air Force Base, and there were constant training and testing exercises. Often they'd drop dummy bombs into the proving grounds to practice accuracy. Well, one day a rookie accidentally dropped a dummy into our school playground at 5 in the morning. Military went in to collect it and realized that some idiot had loaded a real bomb into the plane that morning, and what was laying there could have caused quite a crater. School called everyone and said school was cancelled for the day. I'm not too sure what happened to the trainee or the person who loaded the bomb. It's an entertaining story to tell though. While I was a sophomore, a group of seniors had too many beers one Friday night and decided it would be a great idea to go burn down the rival school's football stadium. In a drunken stupor, they managed to torch the press box before giving up. The next morning, the rival school's staff discovered their football field covered in empty beer cans and abandoned gasoline canisters, all covered with fingerprints. When I was about 15, the school won some kind of grant and spent somewhere north of $20 million on a new technology suite. With 6 computer rooms with super high-end PCs, a brand new server room for the school, 2 music technology AF suites, a video production suite, and a new theater. The night before it was due to open, a group of students broke in, doused the place in kerosene and torched it. Whole building was destroyed, but the kids didn't get caught. Fortunately, the insurance paid out, and they spent over a year rebuilding the place. 2 weeks after it opened, the same group of students, probably thinking if they've gotten away with it once they can get away with it again, torched the place a second time. This time they did get caught, but sadly the insurance company refused to pay out twice in a row. So the school never got their new tech suite. I've posted this before, but I figure these threads could always use some more positive stories. My high school was relatively free from bullying, but the biggest hullabaloo surrounded a mildly autistic student we had who was the subject of some tormenting from his classmates. Some jackoffs figured out they could make him lose his cool by repeatedly clicking their pens and then acting like they couldn't hear it. It got so bad he had to leave class crying. Our history teacher, whom the whole school liked, went on to become principal, went door to door in every classroom to explain to the students what was going on. Rather than talk about bullying, he simply told us that he had thought better of us and was very disappointed to be proven wrong. Sometime the next week, someone was clicking the pens again to rile the poor student up when quarterback of our football stood up, walked over to the kid doing the clicking, took his pens, books and backpack and threw it all in the garbage before returning to his seat. The English teacher leading the class acted like they hadn't seen a thing. The bullying stopped after that. Not a juicy scandal, but I figured I'd contribute a more positive story amidst all the student-teacher fucking. Our entire offensive line of the football team came up with the idea to rob a local franchise restaurant in shop class. One of the kids worked there, and the rest came in with airsoft guns, assaulted an elderly man, held their friend up, he was in on it. They took the proceeds, had dinner at Applebee's, and divided up the rest amongst the CO conspirators. They were tracked down easily because they used the kid who had 32 scholarship offers, brand new Denali with chrome rims and custom tinted windows. One went to jail, the others were put on probation, and all the schools rescinded their offers. I was happy because about 2 weeks before this went down, they pulled up next to my middle school-aged brother and dumped a 2-liter of orange soda on his head. Oh, and after the cost of dinner, they each got 6 apiece. The thing was, these kids were the aberration when it came to the football team. Everyone else on the team was super nice, went out of their way to help disabled students and shut down anyone who was bullying others. Other than the shitty ones mentioned above, the football players were well known for being an approachable group who did the right thing, and they would go out of their way to help others in need. One thing that stands out is that senior year they waged a campaign to make sure a special needs kid got on the homecoming court after having a really rough couple of months with his parents divorcing. They even carried him in on their shoulders after it was announced he had won a spot. I'm pretty sure the kid was on suicide watch for a time, and for the rest of the year, the team made it their mission to make sure he had a proper group of support and to include him in as many things as they could. That and their record was like 8-1. When there are well over 1,000 students in each grade, the popular ones aren't the exclusive non-awkward teens who beat up on the weak, but the ones who go out of their way to be awesome people. Talk about a small payout. I'm sure the kid with scholarship offers looked at that 6 and thought, hell yay. A couple of years ago, some students drew a huge penis with chalk all across the playground. It was colourful and around 10 meters long. They also put condoms into the trees and shit onto the school roof. Apparently it was to promote World AIDS Day. Edit, big-ass penises seem to be a thing. Who knew? Senior prank consisted of dumping month-old fish into the air duct from the roof. They couldn't figure out what was going on at first. School was closed for a week, hazmat was called, and ultimately, after the police got involved for vandalism, the kids responsible fessed up and got community service hours. Good times. Why do kids always fess up to this stuff? They don't know how to clam up around cops. They don't realize that adults aren't infallible yet and assume they'll be caught. This is so true. I remember doing shit when I was a kid and being 100 sure I would get caught eventually, even though there was no way for anyone to prove it was me. The lock on one of the lockers fell off, leaving a hole. A girl stuck her finger in said hole. The school had to be put on lockdown while the fire department came and freed her. Why the heck did they have to be put on lockdown for something like that? Your guess is as good as mine. Maybe so. A crowd didn't gather to watch. Someone flushed pig guts down the toilet on the second floor after a biology lab. It wrecked the plumbing. and blood and sewage came raining through the drop ceiling over the special ed class. Someone thought it would be funny to unleash a can of bear spray in the hallway at lunch one day. The entire school was evacuated to the football field in the rain. No one of authority knew it was bear spray, and so we were not allowed to leave the football field until they could determine the threat level of the biochemical weaponry unleashed in our small-town Canadian high school in the early 2000s. Anyone in the immediate vicinity of the bear spray was taken to the front parking lot, clothing removed, and hosed down with a fire hose in November. Their clothes were bagged up and taken to a lab for testing, and the naked students and some naked teachers were given basically poly sheets and told to sit on a couple of city buses that were commandeered by the local police department and fire department during the investigation. A HAZ MAT team went into the school and found the bear spray. We all got to go home after that. Raining blood. In a special ed class, Catholic school. Female student caught at lunch giving 2 simultaneous hand jobs to 2 male students on either side of her under the lunch table. Caught by cafeteria staff nun. Girl was known as the skier for the duration of her education there. I've always wondered how shit like this happens. Does the girl ask the guys? Vice versa? Do all 3 parties look at each other and just nod knowingly at the same time? First day of school this year, a couple got suspended for having oral sex in the hallway. I remember my freshman year we had this scandal because our entire basketball team was lined up in the boys' locker room and 3 girls were on their knees and going from guy to guy sucking them off. It was like a cheap porno scene when the janitor walked in and lost his shit. It was a week more than a single incident. Middle school at a school for gifted children. There were so many assemblies and other things at the time. It's all fun and games until someone burns themselves, gets run over by a bus, and then helps expose a crime. Sounds like a good premise for a young adult mystery novel. Young Sherlock Holmes, Forest Flames, Nancy Drew and the Mystery at the Bus Stop, The Boxcar Children and the Kitty Diddler Mystery, edit, dumb line stuff. Yes, the infamous mashed potato bowl incident. It was my sophomore year of high school, lunchtime. The lunch at my school was always pretty subpar, and every other week they would make a mashed potato bowl that had lines going out the door. Everyone's in line itching to get their hands on a bowl when this rambunctious teenager, we'll call him Francis, cuts the line and swipes a mashed potato bowl. Kid in front, we'll call him Jimmy, pushes Francis and says, "Why the fuck you cuttin' bitch?" So Francis naturally proceeds with, "Because I can." "What the fuck are you gonna do about it?" Then pushes Jimmy back. POW Jimmy punches Francis and the brawl begins. Each fighter gets about 5 punches in when the school police officer comes to break it up. But Francis isn't done. Francis 1-punch KOs this officer and continues to fight Jimmy. Now some of Jimmy's friends come over to try and pull them apart, but Francis boys come over and fight them. So now we have a 4v4 in the cafeteria, and everyone's going crazy. More police officers come and try to handle the situation, but the kids stop fighting each other and start fighting the cops. What the kids didn't account for though was the fact that the cops brought tasers. The cops tased a kid or 2 and arrested everyone else. Bloody noses and all. We ended up getting an extra 10 minutes of lunch, which was nice. TLDR, Francis cuts line on mashed potato bowl day. Madness ensues. I'm just picturing you sitting there, nonchalantly munching on your potato bowl, watching intently as this all goes down. In high school, it was discovered that thousands of dollars were unaccounted for in the school's funding. A week later, that number increased to 50.0 and then 100,000 and then 400.0, etc. It turned out that the superintendent of our district and his secretary had ended up embezzling millions of dollars from the school district. Upon further investigation of our superintendent, it was also discovered that he was living with a man in Manhattan while also owning a house in Las Vegas in which he lived with a male exotic dancer while claiming to be a widower whose wife passed away at a young age from cancer. Some of the details may be off since I'm recalling this from memory, but yay, that's the basic gist of our incident. I accidentally stabbed my friend in high school. I made a crossbow out of Canex and shot him in the stomach with a sharpened pencil. It got stuck in and he had to go to the nurse. It was his idea though, and luckily he was a bro and didn't tell on me. Edit, if you love Nex, check out RKNEX. Unfortunately, it's kinda dead, but I'm trying to change that. My 60-year-old French teacher, male and very unattractive, got caught having a full-blown affair with a 16-year-old girl 1 year ahead of me. She would hang out in his room during her lunch, which was always my class period, and they would flirt and stuff. Towards the end, before they were caught, she was sitting on his lap and playing with his hair. I called out that it was inappropriate and he said she was his granddaughter. She wasn't. He got arrested after trying to kill himself, and from what I've heard, she's doing much, much better. The battle of the sexes. The teacher got fired that day because of what happened. She was supposed to be monitoring recess. I'm not really sure what prompted this. Probably nothing, but there was an all-out boys versus girls war. I remember swinging from the handlebars at the top of the slide and kicking a girl in the face. She dropped like 9 feet. Not long after 2 more girls came. Each one grabbed one of my legs and then just hopped off the ladder. I hit my jaw falling down and bit my tongue really bad. Lots of kids, including myself, had to go to the nurse. They cancelled school that day and had a meeting with the parents the following week. Why was there a kiddie brawl to begin with? In elementary school, some guy managed to stick a pencil up his eye. We were having reading time or something when he was fascinating over the tip of the pencil, bringing it closer and closer until it poked his eye. He screamed for a while blood was pouring out. The principals ran to the room and the 3rd grade hall was evacuated. Thankfully, the kid didn't go blind, but he was sent to the hospital in an ambulance. It was me, and to this day I still get made fun of for this. There was a big brawl in our parking lot with a bunch of black kids against a bunch of white kids. It was over drugs. The school went bonkers thinking it was a racist thing. Yeah, thank Christ it was only drugs, right? In my elementary school, the vice principal started sleeping with the principal's husband. It was a very small town, so word spread fast. The husband ended up leaving the principal his wife of like 20-something years and married his mistress, vice principal. The principal retired shortly after, and the vice principal was so hated on that they ended up having to leave town. Small towns are fucked. Edit, this was almost 20 years ago. I did some sleuthing and found out that the cheating homewreckers are still married, and the principal moved back to Ontario and looks like she also remarried. Hopefully everyone is happy now. Are they still together? In my middle school, they sold this fruit punch drink that was called jungle juice. One day, 2 kids get in an argument in the cafeteria. It's pretty loud, so most people take notice and get quiet. One of the kids decided to just walk off towards the lunch line and everyone thought that was the end of it. About 3 minutes later, he comes back with a thing of jungle juice and pours it on the other dude's head. Turned into an all-out brawl between the two. It was referred to as the jungle juice incident from that day on. At my university, jungle juice meant random alcohol mixed with whatever juice was cheapest at Walmart that week and the occasional roofie. I once put my bully's name and phone number on an open web forum offering blowjobs. She got calls from all over the country and had to change phone numbers. I never told anyone it was me, and a warning about internet slander made the school announcements for the entire school year. I never told anyone. This is key. High school kids that can keep their mouths shut, those are the ones you have to watch out for. Nice work. One of the big 6 feet plus tough students who had a bit of a reputation as a bully and troublemaker decided he was going to try and intimidate one of the art teachers under the mistaken impression that just because Mr. Scott was only 5'5" in his socks and about 55 kgs wringing wet that Mr. Scott would be a pushover. He didn't know that before Mr. Scott trained to be a teacher. Mr. Scott was in the army, and whilst he was in the army, Mr. Scott was the divisional weight champion for boxing in Australia. He tried to push Mr. Scott out of the way, and when that didn't work, he tried to punch him. Mr. Scott punched him on the jaw and knocked him out. And before anyone says it was wrong, this was 1977. My school still had corporal punishment. Teachers did smack you around the head if you were being a dick. You certainly never, ever laid a hand on a teacher. Talking back, got you the cane or ruler. So that's why this was the biggest incident at my school. My English teacher served in both the Marines and Army in joint operations. A student tried something like this once. He just told the student, if you're going to hit me, hit me. When the student did, he caught the punch and threw him to the ground. No one tried starting shit with this teacher again. My friend told me this story from her last year of high school. A girl got together with a guy who recently broke up with his previous girlfriend, and the previous girlfriend wasn't happy about it. So naturally they got in a very public Twitter fight, and the previous girlfriend did the obvious thing and tweeted a picture of the guy eating her ass and said something along the lines of, "How does my ass taste?" The tweet got passed around a ton, and I think the story made the local news, but I'm not sure. Eventually, it got to the point where they arranged a time to fight outside the school, and when the time came, there were cops waiting and nothing happened. I probably got several details wrong, but that's the gist of it. Edit, just remembered a story from my high school. Our science teacher was known to be very flirty with the attractive girls, and I heard he was even in trouble at a previous school for something inappropriate happening between him and a student. Anyway, the story I heard that got him suspended and later fired, I assume, and charged with sexual assault was like this. Someone was walking through the halls of the school after hours and saw him in the science room with a student. The student, 17 years old, was sitting up on one of those science counter things, wearing short shorts, and he was standing in front of her with his hands on her legs. Not sure if that's what actually happened, but he surrendered himself to the police. It was a pretty big shock, especially to my older brother, because he really looked up to the guy. My brother is really into bodybuilding, and he and this teacher both spent a good amount of time in the gym. This teacher was really fit. Also, he took the girls' basketball team on a trip earlier that year. Not sure how that was allowed if the rumor was true about his previous incident at another school. Our teachers' unions where I live are notorious for their overprotection of teachers, so maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know anything about the law, but my other brother saw the same teacher on a bus about a year later, so I don't think he served time, or at least not very much. Edit 2, damn, this thread is a lot of content for Romanthylings. Edit 3, for the people wondering if these stories happened at their school. Both stories took place in Southern Ontario. You can break up with me, but you can never uneat my ass. Did the obvious thing and tweeted a picture of the guy eating her ass. Fuck, I'm old. When I graduated, there was 3 mobile phones in the whole school. We'd all sit around at lunch watching this one rich kid play Snake. She tweeted a picture of the guy eating her ass. Our principal was cheating on his wife, who has cancer, and IRC it was another teacher too. He resigned, but as awful as this sounds, he did run the school really well. Someone pulled the fire alarm during a really intense bout of snow. Literally every other school district around is closed, but we just had to be that one district open, and it was glorious chaos. It was impossible to control everyone, and we were all out for about 45 minutes just going wild and flinging snowballs and rolling down our school hill. I live in Texas, so sometimes snow is really hard to come by. When we came back in, we were all soaked. My teacher was a particular hard ass, and he wouldn't let any of us go to the bathroom to dry off. It was worth it though. A girl in our school just disappeared one day. Rumors that she was pregnant, etc. Some glitch in the system had her on the honor roll every semester. They'd call her name in assembly every time. Well, I knew her, she wasn't pregnant. Just dropped out, and when I told her name kept getting called for honors, she thought it would be hilarious to actually show up and collect her gift cards. That was the prize. So she did, with a fake baby in her arms. Then spiked the baby on the stage. Damn Jess, you were nuts. I dated her for a few years in college. It went as expected, but that's another story. I want the college story. The captain of our drill team was sleeping with the soccer coach. The soccer coach was married to one of the school counselors. Counselor finds out, calls the captain out of class, not unusual, and starts a huge screaming match in the middle of the English hall. The local paper runs the story with the student's name a few weeks before she was supposed to graduate. Awkward as hell when they called her name. Also, the counselor had to resign while the coach kept his job. Smallton politics. Could you say he was drilling her? At my first high school, it was when the student body president got caught growing marijuana in the school greenhouse. The second high school, it was when a freshman got his hand caught by one of the blades in a pug mill clay mixer. They had to cut it apart to get his hand out, and then he got air-evac to the hospital. I think he did regain partial, if not full functionality to the 3 fingers he nearly lost. Westboro Baptist Church showed up and picketed across the street from my school. One of the girls in the grade below me had died in a car crash, and they decided this was God's way of punishing my state for allowing domestic partnerships. They were supposed to protest at her funeral, but the fire department was already on it and had put giant sheets up around the church for the service. They came to the school instead. This girl was loved by everyone who met her. She was such a good-hearted girl. Even the teachers were mad that WBC was there. Edit, picketed, not pocketed. A dildo was superglued to a bronze statue of our mascot Go Patriots. This wasn't just your average dildo. It was a massive black one you'd see in some crazy, ridiculous big dick porn. Now this third leg of a dildo hung from the statue right where it should have been for a few periods before it started getting a lot of attention. The best scenario began to unfold as our much-hated principal left his office to take a gander at the hilarious prank. Infuriated, and a little on the hefty side, he was known to get red-faced and sweaty when he got angry, which was a lot. In rage, he grabs the black dildo, trying with all his might to jerk it off the statue. And some unsung hero snaps a picture of him in the act on his or her phone. The picture spreads like wildfire, and by the end of the day, most of the school had a picture of our heaving, sweaty principal jerking off a dildo on a statue. That night, an email was sent out to the parents of all the students to let them know there may be inappropriate pictures of the principal on the students' phones and serious consequences would happen if they weren't deleted immediately. But the damage was already done when a guy in my grade got caught trying to get a cow to give him a blowjob. 3 years later, at graduation, everyone mooed as he walked across stage. For our senior prank, a few students actually grappled up to the roof of our 4-story high school, then rappelled down into the library courtyard, broke in with keys that they had stolen from the janitor, and proceeded to fill the entire hallway to the ceiling with books blocking off the main pathway between the school. One of them stupidly went to their locker and the camera was able to identify them from the locker they went to. Edit, apparently the version I heard was slightly off. I'm sure there are many versions of the story, but here it is from the source. I was one of the 4 who did this, not the one who got us caught. PM me if you want proof. Let me straighten some facts. No keys were used whatsoever. The exterior doors in the courtyard were not locked from the outside, so we just walked in. No one visited their locker. The dummy who got us caught wore the same jacket to school the next day. One of the teachers recognized it from the footage of us walking through the school. Then while he was in class, they opened his locker and confirmed it was the same jacket. He confessed when they brought him in. As much as I wish we had rappelled down, the several story climb we had to do was easy because the building is set up in sort of steps, so we only had to drop down level by level. For such a well-planned and executed heist, they failed so badly. I have a friend who got expelled for planting a keylogger on one of the administrative computers in high school, changed everyone's grades in his senior class to A's. Apparently they had no backups or else he deleted them because he helped a couple people graduate high school that day. I believe he got caught after attempting to retrieve the keylogger by rappelling through a skylight. Edit, I can't remember why he had to go back for the keylogger. It's been a while. I can't remember if he thought it would be tied back to him or what. I think if they found the logger, they might have been able to look through security tapes of who had physical access to that computer and found him out. Sorry, I don't have more details. Edit 2. It was a hardware keylogger. Software kill is kind of infeasible in this situation. A group of guys went to another school's gym, climbed the roof and made a little fire while smoking and hanging out. Meanwhile, the tar roof started melting and the little fire actually burned through the roof. They were on. So while they're looking at this small fire they've got going, the wooden frame under them starts catching fire. By the time they noticed, it was already too late and the whole gym burned to the ground. 2 of the guys went to my school and got caught, since they were underage. Their parents were held responsible for what I remember to be $2 million in damages. The guys weren't bullied afterwards, I believe. I think everybody just felt bad that their lives were so screwed for something they just didn't think through. We played your team in volleyball and got a rousing chant of your gym burned down during a game. The middle school I went to used to be the high school for our district before we expanded. The following story is one of the most epic senior pranks that I had ever heard of and lives on in infamy through teachers and students alike. Late one cool Friday night in the fall, 3 students decided to pull of the prank of all pranks. Parents were in bed, the city asleep. They sneak out and head to the local Frisch's diner. Using their own strength and ingenuity, they pull a statue not unlike this into the back of a pickup truck and haul it off to the school. The students then use a system of pulleys not already in place, take it over the roof of the school, and into the courtyard in the middle. As the sun rises on Saturday, the pranksters dig a hole and place the statue inside. Using a concrete mixer, they also pull it over. They mix up a batch and pour it over the base of the statue. Exhausted from their work, they go home and crawl into bed. Monday morning comes around. And there is a whisper turning into a roar at the school. Standing in the courtyard, in all his large, burger-holding glory, is Big Boy. Goofy smile, staring into the chemistry room. Maintenance is called, and they have no idea what to do. It's too heavy to carry, and since the school was locked up, they don't know how it was brought in. Eventually, a jackhammer is used to break up the concrete, and the metal dividers in the doors are taken out. Maintenance and teachers unite to carry Big Boy out of the school and return it to its rightful owners. To this day, it is still unknown who pulled off the legendary Big Boy prank. All that is known is that all Frisch's restaurants in the area now bolt down their statues into giant concrete blocks to deter any copycats. Edit, public education done taught me good grammar. Edit 2, in case anyone doubts the lack of things to do in Ohio, check out how many times these statues are stolen in the comments. We have nothing better to do. In the 3rd grade, just weeks before I moved in, almost the entire grade walked off school grounds during recess. The school has a wooded area surrounding it, so there was no fence or anything to stop them. They still didn't build a fence, just banned anyone from going over there. Junior year, a sophomore boy put a sealed container of chicken noodle soup in an empty locker next to the chemistry room. It sat there for months, easily 5 or 6, until somebody thought about it again. It was brought up in chemistry class 11th grade, and our chemistry teacher took a pair of tongs to the locker and planned to dispose of it once and for all. His hands were too shaky that day, and as soon as he lifted it out of the locker it fell, spilling the entire cesspool that the chicken noodle soup became. He immediately ran back to his room, screaming, "Oh God, shut the doors! Shut the doors!" And hilarity ensued. The smell was indescribable. Raw sewage, rotten chicken, fermented noodles all mixed into one. I have never and probably will never smell anything remotely close to it again. The smell permeated the entire floor and even seeped down a stairwell next to the spill to the classrooms immediately below. The day of the disaster, everyone gagged as they traveled through the halls. Luckily, it happened during 8th period. Last period before we went home. A hazmat team was called to take care of the spill, just in case there were airborne diseases. For the rest of the school year, the teachers lit candles in the hallways and in their classrooms, but the smell never left us. It stayed all summer and even into the next school year until it finally went away altogether. The chemistry teacher who dropped the soup is actually now my stepfather, and we recount this story at least once a year and laugh our asses off. It is one of my best memories of high school. This took a weird twist. Back in middle school, someone pooped in a urinal. This probably wouldn't have been such a big deal if this hadn't happened. Kid asks to go to the restroom. He leaves. He comes back to class 2 minutes later, right in the middle of an important lecture by the teacher, and literally the moment he gets into the door, he shouts at the top of his lungs, "There's a turd in the pee thing." It's been 14 years, and I'm still convinced I haven't yet laughed as hard as I did that day. So that South Park episode? The teacher that was head of the student council stole $3,000 from the student council fund to pay for his cat's surgery. For some reason, the fact that it was to pay for his cat's surgery makes me sad.